So it is good. It's good to see all of you. We are going to be covering today the updates to our level one curriculum. So hopefully folks have got a chance to look over the curriculums. But before we get into that in detail, we do have a couple announcements that we want to make. The first is that we know some folks have been waiting on this for quite a while, but we officially have the Spanish versions of the APT and the organizer, the new versions, and those are available on the hub should you want them or should you need to access them. So you can go ahead and grab those. And then, my computer's being weird. There we go. We also wanted to have a brief discussion about the expectations that we laid out during the intro webinar, where we were talking about the updates to the intro. And one of the things that we had mentioned is we expect you all to download the newest versions of curriculum when they're updated. And we received quite a bit of feedback about that, and we talked to some folks about it. And so we wanted to just kind of explain where we're at now. So the main reason that we even set that expectation, like our concern behind that, is that we want to make sure that people are using the most updated materials, because when we make updates, they're for a reason, right? We don't want people using outdated content when we've made necessary changes. And we want to make sure that the trainings that people are doing represent where we are as an organization and the content that we're training as an organization. So that's kind of the reason behind that. We just wanted people to be more uniform. We also heard loud and clear that it was a lot to just try and download, especially if you are updating any imagery, like some of the pictures, to make it more appropriate for your setting, or updating examples. Kathleen, if you're okay with me kind of picking on you, I chatted with Kathleen, and they make significant changes to examples and visuals for their setting. And it just is a lot to do if you have to download each new deck, make those changes, another deck comes out, make changes. Justin's nodding his head, so I'm assuming kind of in the same boat. And our goal is not to make a bunch of work for you all. So what we've decided is that we are going to keep a running list of small minor changes, and we will update you all on those small changes so that you can make those in your decks. So if you have a deck that you've downloaded and have updated those images and examples, you don't need to redo that. You can just make those changes. When we make significant changes to the curriculum, right, like this past version, it was quite significant of a change, we will request and expect you to download the new version and then update that. But along those lines, we are, as we've kind of been revamping the imagery and the branding of our curriculum, our goal is to get back onto a cycle where we're not updating materials constantly, where we are making more uniform updates, whether that's every 6 months, whether that's every year. That's still something that we'll kind of land on, but we are working toward that so that it's not, hey, randomly you get a newsletter that says update your curriculum. So just know that that's the direction we're headed. We heard people loud and clear about some of the concerns about having to download and make a lot of changes, and so that this is our current plan. So to start it off, an example of some changes that y'all need to make to the deck that just is released is we recognize that we accidentally included 3 slides that were just supposed to be for our internal deck, our TK deck, which is slides 9 through 11. Some of you have seen them. It's like an attendance attestation and a QR code for CEs. We are still not at the point where you all doing trainings can provide CEs or CUs. So you can delete those slides. Those should not be there. Don't stress about it. Second thing is that slides 207 and 208 are the same slide. Some of you might have seen that, so just go ahead and delete one of those. But those are small changes that we can just notify people about without expecting you to download a new deck. Okay?
Where are you going to keep that list, Jordan? Just on the
we
in the
we
same
we
place?
are going to try and figure out that in order
Okay,
where's it going to be best located for you all to actually see and find without having to search for it.
right.
We'll notify you in the newsletter wherever that ends up being. We're still kind of trying to figure that out.
Cool.
So we might include it a couple places, but we'll see. But you'll be notified via the newsletter. Alyssa, was that your question as well? Okay. So again, just it's still important that you use the most up-to-date curriculum. That is our expectation. If we do make a change, we want you to be using it within 60 days. The reason we got to 60 days is because there's an expectation that you are notifying us of trainings within 60 days. So if you have already have a training scheduled and we change curriculum, we don't expect you to change what you've planned, like change the curriculum using different curriculum. If you want to, great. But if you, for some reason, are set on using that curriculum, like you've shared it with that group or whatever, you don't need to make that change. But any training that's scheduled after a change has been made, the expectation is that you're using the new curriculum. That'll make sense kind of around that timing, kind of where we're there. Cool. And then you can find the latest versions on the hub. All right. So again, thank you all for giving us feedback about that, but also knowing kind of why we need to have some more uniformity. So we are going to now get into talking about the new deck. We are going to be using kind of our Q&A format. So if you have questions that you have, you can type those in, and we'll be able to kind of follow up on those as we go. But the just general chat is going to kind of go away as we go through this, but we still want to make sure we get questions. So this deck is, as was our previous one, a 12-hour curriculum. So that is, the expectations when you're doing a training using these materials, it's a 12-hour of content. We have broken it down into like 3 5-hour days where there are two 15-minute breaks and a 30-minute break each day. That is flexible, but it's 12 hours of content. That's what we have created this deck to be. And the learning objectives behind this are for after people attend the training that they'll be able to describe why a new approach is needed for working with individuals with challenging behaviors, explain that a person's behavior is influenced by their thinking rather than their motivation to behave well, identify how implicit bias may impact judgment about a person's behavior, differentiate between problems to be solved and challenging behaviors when doing a CPS assessment, identify how responses to situations are consistent with Plan A, Plan B, and Plan C, use collaborative problem solving to build skills and address problems, not just challenging behaviors, and to solve problems collaboratively with others. So one thing that I really want you to recognize from this is we are not expecting people to be proficient in Plan B after a level 1 training, right? We aren't expecting people to go out and get 4s if you were to rate them on a rubric in some of their stuff. The reason I say that is I want us to have clear expectations for ourselves when we're going through this on what we want the audience and participants to be getting away from it. So always refer to these learning objectives just to kind of keep yourself in check. If you're like, well, I'm not sure if they're really understanding XYZ, check and make sure that it's following the learning objectives. That's going to be kind of one of your best guides. Then one of the best changes about this new format is we have a new workbook. And have you all had a chance to look over the workbook? If not, someone might be able to pull it up and drop it in the chat box. But it is the revamped, follows the slide deck, has all the main teaching points in the workbook. The hope is that it becomes it's a resource that people keep with them to reference and to use. Additionally, the hope is that it cuts down on the need to print out slides for people or for to provide slides, as it has all of the main content in it, and it looks really fantastic. So similar to the path that we followed in our last webinar, I'm going to explain some general changes, and then we'll get into specifics and kind of look through the specifics. And then we'll have a chunk of time at the end to do Q&A, to answer questions and all that stuff. Okay. So first thing is, one of the main changes with all of our curriculum is we were updating some language. Undesired behavior is the current way that we reference it, as I just recognized we need to update our learning objectives because it said challenging behavior, but yeah. Instead of challenging behavior, and if you missed the last webinar, the reason behind that is sometimes there are behaviors that we don't like or want, but some people have a hard time labeling them challenging. And so in order to be more inclusive of those, we made it undesired. So if you still refer to challenging behavior, that's fine. Just the language in the documentation in the curriculum is now undesired behaviors, and that's the reason for that. All the fonts have been updated and made more uniform. We have focused on using you and your in the curriculum instead of also including we and our. There was just inconsistency in that. There's updated iconography and color schemes. Again, there's a focus on kind of like branding so that when someone sees materials, it's the Think Kids materials. It's pretty easy to see. And then there are now workbook numbers on a little book icon on the slide, and I'll show you that afterward. And then just one thing to know is that there may be some holdover presenter notes in a version you have, but I know that Larry's working on updating presenter notes and updating a presenter guide for this new version. And so those will be available when we get them finished, and we'll let you know when that happens. But if you're looking through the presenter notes currently, we may have pulled an image from the parent course, and so the slide might have parent information in the presenter notes. So just be aware of that. This is the little image for the workbook. So when it's on page 4 in the workbook, it'll just have that little image there. I feel like it looks kind of nice and clean, a little bit different there. But then now we're getting into specific changes. So, and then Heather and Elizabeth, if just anything comes up that you need to stop me for, just holler, okay? So a big reason that started this like cascading event of changes is there are certain videos that we are no longer able to use. And that's removing and changing some of them led to other changes, etc. So one of the main things that is going to hurt us all, well, I'm projecting here, but we can no longer use the backward brain bicycle in our curriculum, like the video. I'll just put an asterisk there because I'll get back to it. Also, the Big Bang Theory video, we don't use Dr. Dan Siegel's hand-brain model, no longer in there, and Elijah and Mrs. Hill, that school video. Those videos are no longer able to be used. Any videos that we do use have to go through Vimeo, and so links directly to YouTube, we don't do that. All of our videos are going to be Vimeo, embedded Vimeo links. Elizabeth, yeah, so someone had just asked for clarification about the you and your. So one thing we found is like, in some of the slides, it would be like when you are doing an assessment, blah, blah, blah. So the language would say you, and then present our concern, then we'd change it to our. And so the tense changed, and we just wanted that to be more uniform. So it's a very minor change. It's just a grammatical change, but it is now you instead of our on the slides. You are still welcome to say our when you talk. We just wanted there to be consistency in the slide deck. And again, just as we're going through, if you have a question, please drop it into the chat box or the Q&A thing so that we can pop them through here. So those videos. Now, another thing that has changed is we have more options for the empathize, share, and collaborate ingredients, the 3-part videos for when you're going through that section of Plan B. We have Heather's version, the high school version. We have an elementary version, which is Tamara's chess video. And then thanks to Kathleen and her crew, we have a residential version that we're going to try and get into the deck the next time that we update it for you all, so that there is a residential version as well. And we are going to continue to try and find more versions that are appropriate for other settings. And as we do that, we'll let folks know. Heather?
And Jordan, yeah, also for those of you that work in adult serving organizations, we're working hard to get all of that updated with the number of things going on. It's almost done. So I can't give you a date, but we are working to get both the workbook and the slide deck updated for that. So yeah, coming soon.
Yeah, and when we say soon, it's not like that soon. Hey, by next year it'll be done. Like we are.
No,
the vast majority of it is done. We're
very
just
close. Yeah.
Yeah, there are just a lot of things being finalized right now, and so it's in there. So yeah, so that's pretty cool that we'll have more options. So another change is section navigation. And what we wanted is a more robust overview of what we're covering in the training when we go over it, and to have visuals that match the other curriculums, and for people to kind of see at a glance where we're at. So if you remember, the old version was this, right? This is kind of like, oh, this is where we're at. And then when you'd have, oh, if we're in assessment, this was the visual that kind of said we're in assessment. We now have this, which is kind of like a big overview of what we will cover. So this replaces this version at the beginning. So it has all the different things and everything broken down. Our marketing director, the person who's responsible for our visuals and kind of our branding, had the really cool idea of separating it all into threes, because everything we do is essentially in threes. So we've got 3 sections: philosophy, 3 timings, 3 phases. Within the 3 timings, we've got 3 options. Within the 3 phases, we have the 3 steps of assessment, we have the 3 plans, and we have the 3 ingredients of plan B. And so then when we're at a particular section like assessment, you will see that we're now talking about proactive assessment, and it includes these 3 steps. So this visual will replace this visual of that type. So you can see how it fits into the overall picture of things, but that's just one of the changes that you'll see throughout. Additionally, we changed the opening. So some of the opening slides, really just, we wanted there to be uniformity. If you remember the intro, we included some more evidence-based stuff, more of a explanation about why people are maybe attending this training. And so I'll show you the old way to start, right? Everything's familiar. Boom, our mission, training norms, schedule, download stuff. Here's stuff we cover. So now we have the similar start. We just refer to think people because, again, when we start, even though our name is Think Kids, we want people to be thinking about everyone, right? So especially those of you who work in adult settings, or those of you who work with some people don't necessarily resonate with the term kids, we acknowledge that right off the bat. We do a little bit of self-reflection about why are people here today. We go through some information about why people might take this course. Again, you don't have to read all of this, but it's just some things that we can touch on while we're discussing. And then we provide some of the evidence for collaborative problem solving. This visual again. Then we get into our mission. I've highlighted our mission and vision because that will be updated in the near future, and we'll be changing that. We have our training norms, download materials, the schedule, what we'll cover, the CPS mindset. Okay, so it's just a little bit different flow and different look to the start. And then I felt very proud of myself. Dustin's mullet may be gone, but his memory remains. And so even though we are no longer having the backwards bicycle video in our curriculum, so many of us, it's like ingrained in how we talk about like skill development. Like, hey, this is your first time riding that backward bicycle, right? When we're training, that we didn't want to get rid of it completely. And so we now have a pre-read, or an option for people to, or an expectation that people watch the video before they attend the training, or we have a QR code for them to pull up and watch during the training. We just are not able to show it for them. And that's just legal purposes of not having, like, when we present, we can't use YouTube, things like that. So we want still to have the information about the backward bicycle present. We just are not showing it to them. Heather, did you have something you wanted to add?
No, I was just going to say that it's a YouTube's, like, people have to watch the YouTube videos or individually. Um, so they can count how many people have seen the video kind of thing. So it's part of their standards.
Yeah. So while the video in there is gone, we still have. So you did the pre-read. So what does it mean? So we still refer to it and then talk about it in the training itself, in the course. So it's just not, the video doesn't come right before this. We just refer to that they watched before the training. Go ahead, Heather.
And so far, having facilitated this a couple times without the video, I find that most of the people in the room have seen it. Like, there's enough people in the room to engage in the conversation, and rounding out the edges with a little bit of explanation of what happened and then encouraging people to watch it on the lunch break or whatever has worked out just fine, as far as my few experiences so far. So we'd be curious to hear from all of you how you handle that and what kind of feedback you get or what kind of experiences you have as you try to work through
Yeah.
these slides.
So then a couple other specific changes. That cognition versus behavior slide that I'm going to show, we had a lot of feedback from attendees, trainers, all these people that it was like hard to really explain well, like what's the main teaching point. Some people felt it was really visually overwhelming. I found myself falling into a trap of like getting into arguments with people about conventional wisdom sometimes, like how behavior is handled, and it just, like, that's not the point, and that's not what we wanted to do. It was intended to focus on this idea that skills, this concept of skills and where it fits in is what separates CPS from something else. So the old version, which you're all familiar with, the new version, it looks really messy when you don't play it out in animation form, mind you, but it's very similar, and we've got our problems to be solved, which leads to behavior, which leads to consequence. What's missing from this is skills. And then this is our equation of behavior. Problem plus skills equals behavior. And so this leads into, when we talk about the equation behavior, they've seen it before. So no longer are we contrasting it necessarily. We are just saying this is what we often think about, but within this, we're wondering what's missing. And from a CPS lens, it's skills. So the visuals in assessment, and I was telling Heather as we were starting this, there are so many visual changes that we can't go over them all, but I wanted to give you an example of most of them. So here are some things that look different in assessment, just to give you an idea of what to expect. The old version had the little stair step, right? And it had the lists here. We're familiar with this part. And then we had our APT. And then we kind of talked about 3 steps here. We went into an activity. Now we have the 3 steps that look like this, which again we wanted iconography that makes people think, oh, this is behavior, this is a problem, this is skills, that we use throughout. Same with colors. We then follow that coloring into this example to hopefully make it easier. We then have a visual of the new APT for people. We use that same iconography when we're talking about this. We then also have updated when we are doing, when we're providing instructions for people to use, like we give visual ideas about the undesired behavior. That's the section that we want you to be filling out. So we've got that color piece in there. So the goal is that it just matches and it flows well, and it's easier for people to follow along.
Just really quick, Jordan, a flag for everyone. If you go back onto the activity slide, the workbook already is quite robust. And so these activity instruction slides are not in the workbook. So if you are doing a training virtually, make sure that you share this slide into the breakout rooms. If you're doing a training in person, it's up on your screen anyway, so it's less of an issue. But Just know that these are not, the instructions are not in the work. Page 47 refers to the first page of the APT in the workbook, not the instructions. Okay.
So more changes is the out of the blue slide visual that we've used for a long time. The stumbling point was problems to be solved are predictable. Like we get a lot of pushback from that. We all can understand what we mean by that. Doesn't mean we can predict things in the future, but if we see a behavior happen, we're able to dissect it and understand that there's a situation that will likely lead to it, right? That will predict that from happening. But in a level 1, that's confusing for a lot of people. And it's almost like we're saying, hey, you should know these behaviors are happening because they're predictable, and it can feel judgy. So what we've kind of changed it to is that behavior doesn't occur out of the blue. There's always a reason. And again, the intent is still there. Nothing changed. We're just trying to remove a sticking point for people. So all of our, like, we could still say it's predictable, right? We can still teach that, but people hopefully won't get hung up on the language when it's on screen. We then added some more specific examples when talking about expectations in the unreasonable and reasonable section. So the old one, right, we had the little activity that we do is one of my favorite activities. Then we go into some clear and or unclear versus clear and specific, unreasonable, reasonable, which was just above and beyond their ability, within their scope of ability. So now we start with same activity, just cleaned up the visuals a little bit of these. And then we go into unreasonable, reasonable, same stuff, but then we give an example. And we show how that is going from reasonable to unreasonable. And we hope that this just makes it a little more concrete for folks when we're talking about realistic expectations and unrealistic expectations. Okay. So then there's the kind of a catch-all slide about testing your expectation, and the visual of that has been updated. The old version was this with my very, very professional thumbs up. You got it right. And then that's removed. I'm still disappointed, but I'll get over it. We've got same type of visuals, but again, the color coding matches everything that we've talked about before. So that's a dead end explanation. We've got a problem we've solved and thinking skills. So most of the changes are just visual. It's less content. Okay. Similar when we get into planning, we've got some old visuals. If we've got 3 options, we have this, and then this image with arrows flying at the person.
I'm just watching this. Yeah.
Where we're saying, you know, hey, plan A is not bad, and then someone's being attacked. So we have updated this, and again, this started with the parent caregiver course, and that is now the visual that we use in all of our stuff. We've just got the road sign, got the 3 different plans, and then we just removed the arrows, so it's a little less dangerous. And then we're going to get into where the most significant changes have occurred. And this is specifically around timings, the timings of CPS and the timings of Plan B. In the older version, we used to start by talking about, right, now we're into intervention. Remember, it's predictable. Here are the timings of Plan B. We talk about and compare a little bit. We get into some of the ingredients. We share the brain stuff. We say this is for everyone. Very, very, we're used to that. Now what we do is we just start, hey, we're getting into intervention. Who is this for? This is for everyone. And then that was it. So those slides, those other slides about timing and the brain, we've cut out of that right there. But they're not removed entirely. And we'll get into that. So now, one of the things to know is we reference the 3-step process of the brain in each ingredient. And so we talk about it, but then when we're also going in the empathize ingredient, we show visually using this, hey, we're in this section. So it's easy for us to keep relating things to this triangle. And then the listening triangle activity has been updated, and the activity has been modified /changed/removed. It used to say, hey, here's in the empathize ingredient, this thing called the listening triangle where we do this. The reason we do it is we don't want to interrogate people. Now here's an activity where your trainer will role play. So just show of hands, who always had an awkward time, like with this role play in some way, shape, or form, or is it just us? Like, do we do it together? Do we involve the audience? Like, it was always just kind of weird. So we realized that's not the point, is not to make it more challenging. So what we do is we introduce this, we give some feedback. A truly listen with curiosity, or truly listening with curiosity empowers their voice, validates their experience, and fosters a sense of safety. We then explain, like, when you do this, it helps us avoid interrogation. I do think that guy looks like a magician, but that's just me. And then we put in the quote of empathy is not agreeing or disagreeing, it's understanding. We then get into the video of the empathize ingredient. We show the skills that are practiced in that. And then as a debrief from that video, we say, how did that person facilitating plan B avoid it feeling like an interrogation? So we use the listening triangle as like a way to debrief that video and reflect back on it. So we're not going to have them practice listening triangle, an activity just focusing on the listening triangle, but we have them practice thinking about it as a reflection and debrief. And we also include the listening triangle still anytime they're doing a role play, right? We have that visual up there as a reminder. And when we update presenter notes, we'll just make sure that we remind people of, hey, remember the listening triangle when you're engaging in the empathize ingredient. So then some more changes are when we are talking about framing our concern. We used to just have, I think, 3 examples, and we realized there are 4 main areas: health, safety, learning, impact on others. So we've now have an example of each of those areas, and we've updated the visuals. So it used to look like this. Now it looks like this. And there's a situation, problem, not ideal, better, boom. And I can't remember if we explained the reasoning for using not ideal and better, as opposed to like good, bad, or don't do this instead. Is we want people trying to use plan B even if they're not doing it well. Right? We want to encourage people. So we don't want to use language that makes someone feel bad if they're like, oh, I actually have started a plan B like that, or I've shared my concern like that. I'm a bad person. I shouldn't do that. No, that's okay. There's just a better way that you could do it also. Right? So we're really trying to use language that gets people doing it and feeling comfortable trying, even if they're not confident in their abilities yet. So that's the reason for the language change. And we've got 4 examples now. The organizer. So when we're referencing the organizer, it's now the new look, which hopefully folks are all familiar with now. And then the main section, which has a lot of change, and I assume there may be some discussion about this afterward, but we have moved timings and we've made it more robust. And our hope is that this helps people take away from a level 1 that proactive is not the only thing and not just the main thing. Okay, so after we get through, after we cover proactive, we would get into the other timings of CPS, right? And we talk about spontaneous, we'd share some examples of a response to a request, or if they make a request, right? All good stuff. We'd have a little spontaneous role play. Then we'd get into emergency, similar thing. They're already not complying with an expectation. We show how the planning comes in. If they're in the middle of an escalation or shutdown, we show how that works. We give some strategies around that. But that was it. That was our spontaneous and emergency sections. Now we have very similar start. We start with spontaneous. We show, however, that we are going to be talking about spontaneous and all 3 phases. And so then we start with assessment, just within the context of spontaneous. Someone makes a request. You can dissect that into problem to be solved, thinking skills, undesired behavior, right? You don't have to write it down. It doesn't have to be documented, but you can still separate that so that we know what is the situation as opposed to their response to it, so that if we plan, we're planning around that. Yes, Heather.
Oh, no, that's okay. I want to say something about planning.
Okay. You're proactively
I'm
unmuting.
proactively unmuting.
And so then when we talk about planning, we're choosing a plan for whatever we just identified. So if it was a request, you've got three options. Yes, no.
Yes. And so what I wanted to kind of point out as a teaching point is to highlight that planning means something different in proactive planning versus in spontaneous and emergency. In proactive planning, we are literally planning ahead, right? We're wanting to put that plan in place ahead of time. In spontaneous and emergency, all we're doing is choosing a plan, right? Like there's nothing to do with being ahead of things because this is happening in the moment.
Yep.
So that's why we added that parentheses of you're choosing a plan in planning with those spontaneous and emergency timings.
And so knowing the plans, being familiar with them, knowing what they accomplish helps us make that decision when it comes time to choosing a plan, right? I'll get to that in just a second. And then same thing for response to a request. So we've gone through assessment. Now we're in planning. Now we're in the intervention piece. Reminding people of the three ingredients, hearing their request and assume they have a reason to ask, present your concern about the request, brainstorm, assess, and choose a solution, right? So it's just breaking it down in the context of this. Same thing as if it's a response to a request, reminding people of the order of ingredients and the reason it's there because of our brain's process, talking about the benefits of spontaneous, drawbacks of spontaneous, then a role play. Then after the role play, we compare. So what's different about these? Well, we're really not solving the problem durably because we're really just kind of solving it in the moment, like dealing with something. But we're still doing a lot of other good things too. So that is significantly more content for spontaneous already. And now we're going to get to emergency. And we do the same thing. We start with assessment. We remind people that usually at this point when we're talking an emergency, part of their brain is shut down, right? They're dysregulated, they're upset. That's the context in which we're doing all of this. So when we still do the 3 steps to try and identify what's going on, then we, right, this person is having difficulty in this moment because of, oops, double click, sorry. So then we, same thing as Heather said earlier, we're now choosing a plan, right? We're not necessarily doing all this ahead of time, just in that moment. So if they're already not complying with an expectation, here's already in the middle of an escalation. Here are these. So then the intervention, the 3 ingredients, our goal is to calm them and understand their concern, right? We're really focused on calming them, present your concern, and then work together to choose a solution. And they may not be ready for a lot of brainstorming. And typically, you know, our concern is around safety and well-being. So it's just trying to keep it in context of emergency situations. Still a lot of examples, like if we're trying to calm them, here's some things you can do. Here's some examples of reassuring statements. And then if appropriate, or if you need to, you can get more information. We know that in a lot of situations, we're flexing our reassurance and reflection muscles purely to try and regulate them. Like we're not trying to solve it, we're just trying to calm things down. So we included, if appropriate, you need to get more information, but sometimes it's not appropriate. And so then we just talk through, like, really we're focused on de-escalation. You might not ever get beyond empathizing. You might need a plan B or you might need to pause a plan B and to go to emergency plan C instead. Here's some other things to think about. Try avoid focusing on the behaviors, all that stuff. Benefits of emergency B, drawbacks, and then a plan B or emergency plan B discussion. We don't feel like it's necessarily appropriate to do a role play because it's really hard to role play emergency situation with people when they're just learning it. This is more something that maybe you would do with your group or with your people afterward, after a training, when they have more context. But within a training, we just find it hard. And then we compare. Now, a difference for me that I want to make sure we share is that Stuart wanted us to make sure that we include sometimes we're building skills and we are working on strengthening relationships, even in emergency B, because we are not imposing our power and authority in that moment. Okay. Those aren't necessarily the best times to do those things. But if we're still trying to regulate someone and support them in those moments, it is a strategy to use that doesn't harm them and can still help on those things. Does that make sense for folks? Okay. And then we talk about.
Do you mind explaining that one more time, Jordan? I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. So we've got, so with building skills, they are working on emotion self-regulation skills because we're actively trying to de-escalate them, right? They're working on those skills. They're just practicing those skills in like the hardest setting possible. And then with strengthening relationships, because we are not doing a plan that is like imposing our power and authority on them, we are still trying to hear them out and do so from like an equal level that can help with our relationship, and it at least doesn't harm the relationship. So that's why we have those two goals of intervention active on this.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you.
Of course. And then we go through comparisons. And then we're like, well, hold up, what about group stuff? And so we just let people know, even though practicing group is what we do in level 2, we just let people know that the entire thing that you just learned and practiced can be used in a group instead of just an individual. And then we kind of talk that through. And then we show kind of a little bit of an example. And then that's that section. So that is a lot of new content. It should be stuff everyone is familiar with, but we wanted to make sure that it was included in level 1 because we know that a lot of people who do level 1 trainings aren't always going to be doing proactive CPS based upon their role or just the environment that they're in. And so we wanted to include information about using it spontaneously and in emergency situations to remind people that's still doing CPS and it's still valuable in their benefits.
The other thing that is different is that we reference the different timings earlier, just to let people know it's coming. And then we go through proactive, and then that section that Jordan just shared with you comes after the proactive. So, and when we reference it earlier, we do say the importance of proactive because we still want that to be foundationally. We want people to move away from firefighting to putting out fires, right? Like that is definitely a crucial piece of the model. We don't want that to go away. And then we kind of have a second slide that frames it as, and we all know things happen in the moment. So there's reasons why we have these in the moment versions, not to minimize the importance of remembering to try to incorporate proactive wherever is possible. So that section is in there as well.
Yep. And then there are 2 evaluation slides at the end. Some of you have noticed they're not duplicates. One is for online trainings, one is for in-person trainings. So even though the QR code is the same, there's a little bit of different language. On the online one, it says something about the trainer will put the link in the chat box. And so that's just the difference between those 2 slides, just so you know, because it confused me at first. And then Bob Lieberman had asked us about the review slides at the very end of the training. They're just some slides that have review, and those are not mandatory. We included them because sometimes people like to review like at the end of day 1 or at the end of sections, just to kind of see where people are at, especially if like time has elapsed. So we just put those in there for you to use if you want to, but they're not required. They're just there should you want to use them. Okay. All right. Thank you for listening to me speed run that explanation. And now we are going to open it up to see if we had any questions to make sure we answer. One thing that was dropped in here is there a reason that there are multiple visuals of the equation of behavior? And that is just because, so we've got like bubbles, we've got the one that looks more like a math formula, other things. The intention is just because some of those visuals resonate with some people, some don't. And so by having different options, it hopefully increases the chances of it making sense to people. Some people have math brains, helps for me to see it as written as an equation. Some people like the bubbles because that makes more sense. But that's the purpose. When you are training it, when there are like redundancies and visuals like that, you do not always have to like spend a bunch of time on each of those. You can always just say, this is saying the same thing that we just covered, just looks a little different. So, whatever is going to help you remember that It's the pairing of a problem to be solved with a thinking skill. That's what leads to undesired behaviors, right? You don't have to spend a bunch of time on each one. All right. So were there any other questions that were dropped in the Q&A part? I'll stop sharing if it's okay with people.
I think we were able to answer most of them. I don't know if.
Does anyone have any other questions? Kate.
So I do not have a math brain. Would you mind walking through like how you explain that equation slide? Because I struggled with it when I did it last month.
Not a problem. I'm gonna give me just 1 second to pull it up. And this is the thing, you know, a lot of times we just assume people are it's gonna make sense when we create a slide originally. And so if there are ever any questions about like, hey, how is this covered? You know, what do we do here? Please let us know, because we don't want you to be guessing.
I had that last one down. I was like, oh, I feel really good about this one. And then this one, I was like, oh no, I don't know. I don't know.
And I have to say, Kate Fay, thank you for this question because it's been plaguing me. And so I can't wait to hear how it's worded. So thank you.
So I just want to double check, Kate. I'm going to share this one. Are you talking about this one?
I think so. Is that the one that you referenced like a couple times?
This is the one that we changed from the conventional versus.
Yeah, the two. Yes. Thank you.
Yep. I just wanted to make sure that it was the correct one before I share. Here we go. So many windows open. Oh, there we are. Share. Okay. So the new way is, so when we're thinking about behavior, oftentimes we think that there's something that goes on, then there's the behavior, and then there's the consequence for that behavior, right? That's how a lot of, we often are thinking about behavior. Kate, don't say what I'm saying right now. This is garbage, but you know what I'm talking about. So we're leading to this. There's a situation, there's a behavior, and there's a consequence for that behavior. And when we think about behavior in that way, we feel like from a CPS land, like we feel like there's something missing. And what do we think is missing? This component of skills, because we know that there's more to behavior than just what happens after it. That would be just a simple way to kind of go through that section.
Can I take a stab too? Okay, so I often like to give an example as well, because I do think that this can be confusing. If you want to go ahead and put up so we have something that triggers something happens, and just like Jordan said, and then as a result of that, somebody behaves in a certain way. When we talk about consequences here, we're not talking about punishment necessarily. We're talking about the result, something that happens as a result of the person behaving that way. So the example I like to use is you have a child, person in a group setting. Let's just say for the sake of this example that it's a school, and you have a student in a schoolroom who is sitting there in a group of kids, which is the situation, and decides he wants to get people's attention and makes a joke, right? And then the consequence to making the joke is that all the kids focus their attention on him and start to laugh, or them, and start to laugh. So that, in this equation, that laughter is what he was looking for, and it reinforces the desire to make another joke. And so therefore, it's like that is that part of that equation of it reinforcing the behavior, right? So when we think about this child then makes another joke and another joke and another joke, and now everyone's getting annoyed, right? Because it's not funny anymore, and the teacher's becoming upset, and they're still joking. because now go ahead and what's missing is that this child doesn't have the social skills to pick up on the fact that they're not funny anymore, right? And so the consequence alone is not helping them adjust the behavior because the skill is what's keeping them from understanding that it's not appropriate to keep joking anymore. So use your own example, but it's really the idea of the ABC of behavior is that people learn from the consequences of their behavior. But that's not necessarily true because we have lagging skills that don't necessarily get practiced and reinforced just by picking up on the consequence. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, thank you both so much. As soon as you said that, I was like, oh yeah, I get it now. So thank you.
And it's also hard because this isn't in the context of the stuff that we've shared beforehand, which is we've been talking about the philosophy, we've been talking about conventional wisdom, explaining like where it's kind of like insufficient to explain what's going on, and so this kind of follows all that to, and it can help make these points. So you may have already used an example beforehand, and then you carry it through like Heather did here to kind of just clearly detail it. But it's really just that idea of, so what we're doing though is we're for CPS, we are saying there's something else that's going on here, and it's a skill piece. And so that's what makes this equation of behavior. Behavior is the result of a problem happening in which people use the skills they have, and that results in the behavior.
Can I just quickly, for me, what's tough about it is maybe the left to right. I'm so used to not thinking of, okay, so the problem to be solved often is not clear to us until we have a conversation with them or we talk to them. So, the behavior is what focuses us on the fact that there's a problem to be solved. And then we go back and talk to them and realize what prompted that behavior. That's the way I look at it. And then skills have a play. So it's not so linear like that.
Even if we don't know what the problem to be solved is yet, it
Yeah.
still came first, right?
Right,
Like,
true.
right? So this is an image of helping people, even if you have to start. And by the way, Davina, that's like a level 2 concept. So just being cautious of that because that could be really confusing. But we do cover that in level 2 where we say sometimes you don't know what the problem to be solved is.
Yeah.
So you might have to start with behavior, but we want you to walk backwards and make sure
Right.
you're problem solving the problem to be solved, not drilling down on behavior, right?
Yeah.
So the equation stays the same, even if we have to start in the middle. We don't want to ignore the fact that what started things was there was a situation that was hard for this person. And we're going to assume that the skills are the culprits for why it was hard, right? And
you bounce around on this. You bounce around. You bounce around when
No,
you
this
talk
is
about.
so Davina, tell me if this helps. This is not us doing anything. We're not doing CPS. We're not doing an assessment. We're literally just trying to say this is how behavior, when we're thinking about CPS, that this is how behavior occurs. Behavior occurs when someone doesn't have the skills to manage a situation.
Yeah, I see.
And because this is still the visual when we do assessment, right? Because you were saying like sometimes all we know is the behavior.
Right.
And so when we start doing something with that information, you're absolutely correct. We start with behavior and then we try and figure out what the problem to be solved was, identify skills. So
I see.
So that piece that you were explaining, I hope is still captured in this when we're actually doing the assessment. We do start with behavior. But when we're thinking about what causes behavior, when we're in the philosophy section and we're thinking about what leads to behavior, it's that pairing, right? That two to tango of situation and skill, which results in behavior.
Yeah. Okay. I see how you talk about it. I don't like it. Don't tell anyone. But I mean, it just doesn't. But as you say, some of us have math brains and all of that. So you can't like everything. So thank you.
Yep. Any other questions, folks? Go ahead, Steve.
Yeah, just a real brief comment on as someone who just got certified as a trainer. You made a comment earlier about certain things are not required, but they're there for us. I know when I was trying to put the slide deck together when I did my training with the Bowmans, it would have been very helpful if those kinds of comments would have been in the notes in the slide deck because, as a person learning to really present it, I just assume everything in the slide deck is required. So just kind of a little, if you just put that little comment in there that, this one's not necessarily required, it's like, it makes super clarity, but I'm just thinking if I didn't come to this training and then, 2 months from now I'm doing my final last step and I get the slide deck, I'm feeling like it's required and I'm feeling obligated. So just those kinds of things could, I think, really help, especially the newer learners.
For sure. And thanks for letting us know that. And that
Yeah.
is our goal is to have presenter notes that accurately reflect that, to have a trainer guide that explains it. And as of right now, the only like non-required slides are the review slides that are at the very end.
Well, and in a level 1 in any training, it's always going to be something that you might have to cut some things out, or you might add a video here or there, or do something because each of your groups are going to be different. And we know that you fall behind sometimes and you might not have time for every activity. And that's just life as a trainer. So so please know that no one's going to be policing you about, oh no, you skipped some slides. Right. It's just, it's important to know that we understand, we all do this. It has to be flexible. So, but yes, appreciate we wanted to get this out to you as soon as possible. And we are doing the presenter notes as phase 2. So more to come on that.
Yeah. And because we're constantly balancing being flexible, knowing different circumstances, knowing different groups with maintaining standardization so that when we do a training, we can say, these are the results that you will receive when you do this training, right? And if every training is different, we can't say that. And so that's why we have to try and keep some level of standardization. But within that, we know that there has to be the flexibility that Heather explained. So it's like we try our best, knowing that sometimes something's going to come up and we might have to make a change or a modification. Have any of you had a chance to use this deck yet? Deidre, how was it? If you don't mind me just kind of asking.
Sorry, Erin and I did a co-led training in March, and I have to say it was, for me, I felt the flow was excellent. We got far less pushback or questioning on that conventional wisdom piece, where I feel like that really triggered, like it it activated reactions in people who, felt that their training, their experience, and their career path was being challenged from people from a real behavioral perspective. So I've had great feedback and great response. And from the presentation side, I felt like it was a really good flow. I really liked it. I loved the emergency and spontaneous piece being included more clearly, because from a school perspective, the reality is that people would walk away from essentials being really overwhelmed. How am I going to do all this proactive? So it's been game changing actually in my setting, in my coaching sessions with my staff too, to be able to take this piece from the training that shifted and incorporate it into coaching. And it's been very well received.
Awesome.
So
good. That's really good to hear. Yeah, because the old content, it really like built up to proactive plan B and then kind of ended. And so most people left thinking that that is what doing CPS is, right? And even though we'd say there are all these other ways that you can do it, so many people had in their brain that that's what if I want to do it, I have to be planning out these sessions. I have to do this big thorough assessment. And so now the hope is having that additional content in and having more of it, which there's more discussion time. Like hopefully we aren't rushed when we're getting there, so we have plenty of time to dive into it, that people can see how they can use this in their role and in their setting.
And I just want to, thank you, Deirdre, I'm so glad. And I've done it a couple times myself. And the reason that we're able to include that new information is because we cut out a lot of videos. So just the time that did not come from nowhere, like in my experience so far, it's been about 12 hours, but to me, it was amazing how much the first time I did it, we didn't have as robust a section in the timings section. And I was finished like an hour and a half early. I was like, what happened? But it was the taking out the videos really changed the cadence a lot. And it's too bad that they're not in there, but it is providing us the opportunity to cover some really important content that we did not have time to cover before. So pros and cons, right?
I also think that giving people like focus and attention and permission to see that step, you know, those 3 steps, doing it spontaneously in emergency, I feel like it's helping people build skills to do more proactives with fidelity. I don't know if that makes sense, but I feel like there's some real potential there. And like I said, I've done a couple of intros with some new staff, and it just feels like it's better received.
Good.
So
Yeah, and hopefully we save some additional time by not arguing with ABAs or anyone else about like, no, we're not putting down your job. We're not telling you you're wrong, right? So with some of those earlier slides too. Kevin.
I used it. I just finished yesterday with training for our community-based staff, and it worked. It worked really well. I like the new flow, and we break it into 4 sections and do it over 4 weeks. And I felt like the timing was great for all, the whole thing, for all 4 sections that I did. So, and the workbook's great just to have all that information. At first, when I saw the workbook, I was like, you're giving them all the answers, like you're telling them everything in the workbook. There's nothing for me to talk about, but I understand that it's nice for them to, like it's reinforcement of the material and then they can walk away with it and refer back to it later. So I got over that.
Maybe if they do a good job listening, Kathleen, they can earn their workbook from you.
That's a great idea.
I've heard that's effective.
Great idea. And I know that our residential trainers have a few of them have used it now. So I don't know if any of you guys want to speak up, but
Yeah, I was going to make a comment, Kathleen. We used it last week, and to me, I think that the flow was more natural. It was easier to follow. Staff, I had told them, hey, this is my first time training these new slides with the new workbook, and they were, following along in the workbook, so they were able to tell me like, no, we're here, or this is the page that we're on in the workbook. And so I do think that for our visual people, that having the workbook with the slides on it is helpful for them. And I will say, Deirdre just made a comment that I wanted to double down on. I forget what it was that you just said, but I do think that it's cleaner, it's easier to follow, and I think having the information on the slides for them makes it just easier for them to understand. Like I just think that the slides are easier to understand if you're an audience member.
Good.
Yeah.
Good, because and we appreciate hearing this feedback because we don't just come up with this on our own, right? This is a lot of learning from you all and your experiences on trainings that you've completed. You've all told us like certain sections that are confusing or certain things that you'd like more of, and we do listen and try and take that into account. And so hopefully that you see that this is a reflection of a lot of the feedback that you've given us over time. Now with some updated visuals too. So it was Kevin and then Alyssa, and then we'll go here.
Yes, I think that you've had a lot of focus on kind of getting rid of that judgmental language, and I appreciate that. And one of the areas or a slide that I've been kind of reframing because it comes across judgmental, particularly in parent groups and in coaching parents, is uh, there's no such thing as a failed plan B. In order to get the parents not to feel like failures, because there's a lot of shame there, then I've been reframing it as you may feel unsuccessful. So rather than a failure, if you're feeling unsuccessful, then let's work around that and see, okay, what's not successful for you? Did you not start well? Did you not share which ingredient is not successful for you? And I think it doesn't need to be changed in the curriculum, but I think the way that it's reframed for people, if they hear that word failure, sometimes that really sinks in, or they can't get off of that thought. So I've been changing that up a little bit and reframing it.
All right. Yeah. And Alyssa?
Hi. Well, first of all, I really love that reframe that Kevin just did regarding the parents, about using the word unsuccessful rather than failure. But the reason I raised my hand in the first place is because I'm relatively newly trained, and I guess even though I was probably trained using the old deck, I'm really just for the first time sinking my teeth into the deck.
Mhm.
And I'm curious if Deirdre can expand a little on what she said before, like where exactly she was getting pushback on people who come to this from like with a behaviorist background.
Sure. It's really about the that slide about different conventional wisdom. You know, that slide that we had just gone through around thinking about the thinking skills. The old slides kind of activated people. They were feeling I don't know, Jordan, like challenged a little bit, that by doing CPS you had to kind of toss out, everything you knew about ABC data, for example, would be one thing, adding that thinking skills piece in. But I didn't have any, I gotta say, we really didn't have anybody coming back questioning things during the training that we just did. And it was to school-based people. And we had a lot of BCBA people in the training too. So I thought that was a huge win to have
Yeah.
those people with strong behavioral training leave the training and feel like they could incorporate it into their work.
Yes, I think to speak to that, over the last several iterations of our curriculum, we've been working really hard to not alienate people that are coming to us with different lived experiences, whether it be professional or right, because we're providing information about a new way of thinking about things. That doesn't mean we're judging you or telling you the way you were thinking about things is wrong, right? And again, within the context of healthy applications of different models. And I feel like I have to say, there's no such thing as failed plan B is meant to say, don't be hard on yourself, no matter what. If you're doing plan B, you're doing good. Like, it's not meant to talk about failure as in, you know what I mean? So like, if that's the way it's coming across, we definitely want to hear that, because it's really to the point of, we want to, if you're not doing plan B with fidelity, if your intention is to connect and collaborate with someone, you're still successful. That's supposed to be what the message is. So if that's not how it's coming across, please let us know. Yeah, no such thing as a failure. We don't want people to try it and feel like there's any possibility of failing. The effort is what's important. So,
And I
The
want
other
to make some time to answer some questions that people have remaining. I also am going to put up this attendance tracking form for people, because we are near the end of this, and some people might need to leave, and I want to make sure people get credit for that. So I don't want to ignore people. If you have something that you want to ask, I just want to also make sure that people are able to finish up here. So with that, just for the rest of the group, and Alyssa and Kate, not ignoring you, but thank you for attending. As you start to use this deck, and if you please share feedback We have, the suggestions that you can leave and share. We do want to hear from you all. We know we're able to hear from you in webinars, but always feel free to email or specifically use that suggestion box to kind of just shoot us.
And we are considering this a pilot right now. So definitely we will be taking your feedback into consideration. It's going to be a pilot through August. So, Kate.
You actually just answered my questions. I was wondering how to give feedback and how long the pilot was happening. Just because we're trying to have some grant money to spend and I want to print those giant packets because they're wonderful, but they are
big
in color. And I just was trying to decide when I could purchase those.
So the actual, we just got approved to be able to sell. I can't remember what all the specifics were, but they're not available for purchase yet, but the certified community will have the opportunity to purchase like professionally produced workbooks through the website, and you'll have your own discounted price for those. So I don't know when to expect that though, but it's in the works.
And so what we will say though is because the pilot is through August, we will not be making changes until
August.
August would be when we start to get like when we really collect feedback and look through all the feedback. So we won't have stuff finished and updated until September, October. So if you're going to be doing anything before that, you should feel good about what we have.
Perfect. Thank you.
Guys, the link, I clicked on the link and it's taking me to the place where you download the seal. It's not actually taking me, or am I supposed to click out of that page to somewhere else?
Was you last on the sale when you went into the hub? That could be it. It's probably taking you to the last place that you was at. So give me 1 second.
Oh, okay. So it's going to take, like, if we were in the hub recently,
You should go to, hold on 1 second. Let me just walk you through it. On the left-hand side, do you see where it says participate? Click on participate, and underneath it's going to say webinar attendance attestation. Click on that, and then you'll see for April.
Awesome. Thank you.
You're welcome.
And so thank you all, everyone. You are released. If people have a couple quick questions, I can be here for just a little bit. But yeah, thank you all. We'll see you soon.